Hi there. I know that there's still lots of you not able to get back to your own churches yet, and we're always welcome if you'd like to join us. I think you might be surprised at what you might find, but people have been saying that they've been enjoying the videos I've put up over the last few weeks of a weekly talk. And the one today has rather a strange title. It's the blessing of unrealised aims. You might think, how can you have a blessing from aims that are not realised? Well, you need to listen, and hopefully you'll discover. Well, again, it's a verse that you may not have read very often, because it's in the second book of Chronicles, and it's chapter 6 and it's verse 8. But when you have a moment, please try and read the first 11 verses of that chapter. And this is what it says: "But the Lord said to my father David, you did well to have it in your heart to build a temple for my name." Do you know that verse? Well, there's an old story about Queen Mary, who's reported to have said to her courtiers that after her death the word Calais would be found written on her heart. You may remember that she had brooded over the loss of the French sea-coast town. If it were possible, and you were to examine the heart of King David, you would most likely find written on it a picture of a temple. Building that temple had been his dream. Night and day he had thought about it, planned for it, worked for it. It was his great, his supreme, his all-absorbing ambition to build a house for God. Every other aim was subordinate to this. No doubt David was anxious to make Israel strong, to subdue her enemies, to extend her borders. But over and above everything else, he was anxious to build a house for God. Those of you who know me, and I'm sorry if you do, will no doubt know that God has given me a passion to see the ministry of the old meeting house Congregational church restored. So I can certainly identify with King David. I wonder what great passion you have. You have got one, haven't you? It was Plutarch, the Greek philosopher, who said of Roman Cato that he was so possessed by the conviction that there could be neither peace nor safety for Rome so long as Carthage remained in strength, that he never made a speech in the Roman Senate without concluding this sentence. Wait for it, my Latin isn't very good. Delenda es Carthio. And if you've forgotten your Latin, it means Carthage must be destroyed. Again, those of you who know me will know that one of the things I hammer away is how to find a way for the chapel to be free from a lease entered into years ago with the local council, and to rebuild a congregation. And in much the same way, David never let a day pass without saying to his soul, God's house must be built. It's not fit that I should live in a house of cedar while the ark of God dwells within curtains. Every day of his long reign, David said some such words as that to his soul. The temple was in his heart, just as the old meeting house is in mine. But sorry, got a twisted tongue. But know this temple, which was in David's heart, never got built on solid ground. He'd collected vast stores of material, he made lavish preparations, but he never saw one stone laid upon another. His vision never became a fact. He was so occupied with statecraft, he was so incessantly engaged in warfare, that the time never came when he could arise and build. And so he went down to his grave with his great purpose unrealised, with the hope he had cherished in his heart unfulfilled. And this is just an illustration of the great tragedy and bitterness of human life. The bitterness of life is not its shortness, but its incompleteness. The shortness of life is only bitter as it contributes to its incompleteness. And it is this incompleteness that is the real tragedy. Sadly, this is the very badge and sign of many people we come across today. However, just occasionally we may come across a Simeon who feels that life has given him all he desired and hoped for, and can therefore say, Lord, lettest thou thy servant depart in peace, according to thy word, for mine eyes have seen thy salvation. That's in Luke chapter 2 and verse 29, and Anglicans will know it very well because they're words from the Magnificat. But the vast majority of men and women do not want to depart, for the simple reason that they have not seen the fulfillment of all that was in their heart. There are hopes which they have not realised, plans that they've not perfected, tasks which they've not finished. The life of everyone ends in disappointment. Abraham left Ur of the Chaldees to receive a country for an inheritance, and he died owning not a single yard in Canaan except a grave. Jacob cherished the same great hope, and he died a stranger in a strange land. Joseph lived for the same great ambition, and his history ends with a coffin in Egypt. Moses inherited the same glorious purpose, to establish Israel in their promised land in Canaan was the task to which he gave his life. He trained himself for the work by the long discipline of 40 years in Midian. You'll recall that he succeeded in bringing Israel out of Egypt by the slow and hard training of the weary wilderness years. He succeeded in converting a rabble of slaves into a compact and strong nation. He brought them to the very edge of the promised land, but he never saw them settle there. We read, and Moses died in Moab. In Moab, the land of disappointment and failure. He missed his aim. He never accomplished his purpose. And do you remember? That is where David died too, in Moab. He'd been collecting material for his temple all his days, and he never saw a single timber placed or stone laid. and that was where all men die, in Moab. There has only been one in the world's history who accomplished everything he set out to do. Jesus came forth from the Father to redeem the world, and he redeemed it. He offered the one and perfect oblation and sacrifice, that in dying he could say, "It is finished." But the rest of us, we never finish. Death always comes too soon. We want more time. Our tasks are never done. I don't know if any of you know anything about history. Have you ever heard of Sir Wilfrid Lawson? He lived between 1829 and 1906, and he gave his life to one of the greatest of social evils at the time, drunkenness. You might remember there were all kinds of leagues, temperance leagues in those days. He dreamed that drunkenness could be abolished and England could be sober. Drink totally destroyed people's lives. It did then, and it can do so today. He fought tooth and nail against this social evil. Towards the end of his life, he was able to introduce a deputation of MPs to the Prime Minister, who actually made a pledge to bring about temperance legalisation. However brave, old Sir Wilfrid died before seeing the salvation for which he fought. And that is the common, the universal experience of mankind. The broken shaft has been and always will be the most fitting symbol of the life of man. Our tasks are never done. Achievement never answers to intention. We dream of temples which never get built. The grave is more than just the burying place of lifeless bodies. It's the burying place also of many a great ambition and many a noble hope. His failure to build the temple of his dreams was the great disappointment and bitterness of David's life. And yet the significant fact is that David was a richer and nobler man for cherishing the dream that never got realised. If it be true, as I've been saying, that the bitterness of life consists in its incompleteness, that our greatest disappointments come from cherishing hopes that never get realised, then it would seem that the way to save ourselves this bitterness would be to cherish no great or beautiful hopes. But in so arguing, we should go far astray. Let me remind you of the words of Tennyson: "'Tis better to have loved and lost than to never have loved at all." And it's infinitely better to have dreamed great dreams and fail to realise them than never to dream dreams at all. David was a better man for his dream of a temple which he loved. There was a blessing in this great purpose that never got fulfilled. "You did well," said God to David, and this dream of his which never came true, that it was in my heart. In a twofold way, I can see that the cherishing of this aim was productive of blessing. First, it was a blessing to David's own soul. Nobody can live with a great purpose without being ennobled by it. Little aims make little men. but great aims make great men and women. There's a refining, enriching influence in the mere possession of a lofty purpose. There were faults enough in David's career, but through all his faults, the essential greatness of the man shines forth, and the greatness of David is due to the greatness of his ambition. David's heart was chiefly set not upon wealth, not upon military fame, nor upon vast territories. It was chiefly set upon the glory of God. To build a house for the Lord was the supreme desire, and that great and holy purpose of his helped to make David a man after God's own heart. David didn't accomplish his desire, but the mere cherishing of it made him a better man. A great purpose, though unrealized, is pregnant with blessing. You do not make life happier by disregarding great ambitions on the score that they cannot be fulfilled. You only make it worse. The one person I despair of is the man or woman who dreams no dreams and sees no visions. Before such a person there can lie nothing but a low and sordid existence. We read in Joel chapter 2 and verse 28 that your old men shall dream dreams, your young men shall see visions. That is one of the marks of the presence of the Divine Spirit, and it's also the way to greatness and nobility of life. Love your dreams. The nobler the dream you cherish, the richer the blessing it will leave behind. We can think of Paul. What a dream it was that he cherished. To me, to live is Christ. Gosh, do we all do that? We read it in Philippians chapter 1 and verse 21. He said he was satisfied with no aim less than that, to become like Jesus Christ. Not, he says himself, that I've already attained or am already made perfect. If you like to speak of it as such, it was an unrealized dream. It was an unfulfilled hope. But what a man it made of Paul. Among those born of women, there's none greater than Paul. Among the saints in heaven, there's none nearer the throne than Paul. Among the forces at work in the world today, making for righteousness and faith, there is none mightier than Paul. And Paul was made by his great vision. We read in Acts 26 and verse 19 that I was not disobedient to the heavenly vision. That same vision must be our vision too, to be conformed to the image of the Son. That is the great hope that we must set before ourselves. When we do, we shall have to say, like Paul, that we have not attained, but it will leave its blessing behind in the shape of an enriched and ennobled life. We shall have done well that it was in our hearts. Secondly, it was a blessing to those who came after him. It is quite true that David never built a temple, but it was a mere waste of time to cherish that ambition. Was it all for nothing that he made such vast preparation and collected such store of material? No, it was not for nothing. Solomon could never have built the temple had David, his father, not cherished the hope of building one. The materials that David collected, Solomon used. The dream of the father became the deed of the Son. No, it was not at all for nothing that David cherished this hope. You did well that it was in your heart. And it is just like that still. A man does well to cherish a great purpose in his heart. He may never see the fulfillment of it, but he cherished it and worked for it, others to see the realization of it. We're bound up together in the bundle of life, so that the labours and toils of one generation only find their fulfilment in the achievements of the next. Every triumph springs out of seeming failure. Every success is built upon a foundation of baffled and disappointed effort. On the 6th of April 1593 they hanged Greenwood, Barlow and Penry on the gibbet at Tyburn. They cut their lives short because they dreamed of a spiritual church and then sought to realise their dream. Would it have been better that they should have been content with things as they were, content with the state church of the day? Would it have been better that they had not dreamed such a dream at all? Was it all in vain? No, it was not in vain. They did well that such a dream was in their heart. Out of their great hope, there were sprung these independent churches of ours, with their rich and ample spiritual freedom. They hanged John Brown of Charlestown in October 1859 because he dreamed of a free America and dared to work to translate the dream into fact. Would have been better that John Brown had never dreamed such a dream? Would it have been better that he should have been content to see Africans enslaved? Was it all in vain that he and his sons perished in the cause of freedom? No, it was not in vain. John Brown dreamed, and others caught the vision from him. In a few years, thousands of young men from every town and village in the north of America were marching out to battle for the slave. And as they marched, they sang, "John Brown's body lies a-mouldering in the grave. John Brown's body lies a-mouldering in the grave. But his soul goes marching on." Do you remember singing that? And so I say to you, cherish great purposes and noble hopes. You may not yourselves live to see them realised, but the world will be better for them. The world stands where it does just because in every age there have been men and women brave enough to give their lives to great causes and splendid ambition, though they might never live to see them fulfilled. The cause of liberty, the cause of purity, the cause of sobriety, the cause of religion. They have all had their heroes, prophets, apostles, martyrs. In a sense, these men failed insomuch as they did not see their tasks accomplished, but in another and deeper sense, they did not fail. On their toil, our success is built. Of their sacrifice, our large inheritance has come. They laboured, and we have entered into their labours. Link yourself onto the great causes. The wide world will be better for it. It may mean disappointment and sacrifice to you personally, but you will enrol yourself amongst the pioneers and martyrs of the race, and your names, like those of the apostles, will be graven on the walls of the eternal city of God, which your labours have helped to build. But there is a third reason why it's a good thing to cherish a great purpose in your heart. God takes will for deed and reckons honest purpose for achievement. You did well, he said to David, with his plan to build a house, that it was in your heart. And if I'm asked what this means and involves, I answer that I think that God took David's will for his deed, that in the great books there is a finished temple attributed down to the shepherd king's account. Yes, in the divine books it's not to Solomon's credit only that the temple was placed. It is put down to David's credit too, for David would have built it if he could. And David's labour made Solomon's achievement possible. It's true he never saw one stone put upon another. He never saw a single timber put in its place. But for all that, it was not a blank you see opposite David's name. He's credited with the temple he wanted to build and prepared to build. It was not wasted effort. You did well that it was in your heart. Is this a great purpose in your heart? Is there a great hope that we cherish? How shall we know? Well, what proof have we that the temple of David was in David's heart? Why, the stores he collected, the preparations he made. There could be no doubt or mistake about David's honest and earnest wish to build God's house. How shall we know that to be like Christ is really your desire and aim? Well, ask yourself what preparation you are making for the realization of your desire. Faith always proves itself by works, and if this desire is really in the heart, it will soon reveal itself in the life. Saying that you want to be like Jesus is not enough. We must work at it. Are we working at it? Is it our first and chief concern? Is this great hope, this great purpose in our hearts? Oh, happy people if it is. For listen to what is promised for those who honestly and really want to be like Christ and love for that. We can read it in the first book of John, chapter 3 and verse 2. Dear friends, now we are children of God, and what we will be has not yet been made known. But we know that when Christ appears, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. Well, I hope you found a crumb of inspiration in this talk today. I pray that God will bless you and enrich your life. Amen.